We're back.
Let's go, dude. Back from the expo. It makes me a little sad, Britt, because I was just with you in person.
I know.
Just
I was
a
thinking that when I
mere
was
day.
leaving, as soon as I got to the airport and, started getting on the plane and didn't have any of my fantasy friends with me, the sadness kicked in, man.
All right, you wake up one day, Toronto Dave is right there. Next day, he's gone, man. It's tough
We
times, but either way, we're back on the airwaves. We're back. We're live talking ball. That's the other funny thing about the expo. And we'll get to the expo. We're going to talk about a ton of stuff today. We're going to talk about the expo. We're going to talk about some of the drafts from the expo. Our own Britt Flynn was in the Queens Classic. And man, I'll tell you what, that draft was ruthless. It should be called, it was like more like, like the Queens getting beheaded. Like it was, you guys are sharks, man. And I saw every strategy under the sun deployed, right? Zero RB. There was stacking, there was, sniping.
Oh,
So
so
that
much sniping.
there's a lot of sniping. So that one was funny to watch. The IDP guys were there doing something that I don't understand, but I'm like watching that IDP draft. And seriously, I got to get into more IDP leagues because there were a couple picks where I was like, who? And then I looked the guy up and I'm like, oh, that dude had 87 tackles last year. I should know who that guy is. But so we'll get into all that. We're gonna do some dream trade scenarios. It's gonna be a good one today, Britt.
I,
But I think what we should do is probably get it started off with a little bit of news, right?
yeah, there's so much news. Getting back and catching up, you mentioned us being at the expo and there are so many people around. We don't exactly have time to check our phone. So when we get back, we're like, what happened? What happened? So many injuries, so much stuff to get to. So, but the big news that I want to talk about came out
You
yesterday
can't talk about
afternoon.
news until we do the news sounder, Britt. That's the
Oh,
rules. All
oh,
right.
okay.
So, Erndog, let's first of all, how dare you? We haven't even begun the news yet. Erndog, hit us with the segment. Let's go. Let's pass it over to Britt Flynn for the breaking news.
Oh, thank you, Coop. I'm so used to you guys and your introduction that, I was just expecting that that was what was going to happen.
Now we're in the news booth. We're in.
All
Let's
right.
go.
All right. We're good. So yeah, the big news came out yesterday afternoon about not one, but two free agent running backs getting signed. Dalvin Cook signed a 1 year, $8.6 million deal with the Jets, and Ezekiel Elliott signed a 1 year, $6 million deal with your New England Patriots. So I have a couple questions here. A, what are your thoughts on their fantasy values with these new teams? And B, what are your thoughts about the fantasy value of the incumbent starters?
Yeah, this is rough here because we kind of ripped the band-aid halfway off. I would have loved if just by some act of the fantasy gods that Leonard Fournette and Kareem Hunt could have also signed because Leonard Fournette is still out there lurking around. For a while here, you and I talked about this where we kind of had the yellow tape around a couple of these players, and the one that might be safe now that I wanted before we even get to these values. I had the yellow tape around Ramondre Stevenson, Brees Hall, and Tony Pollard. And the Zeke signing here, do you think Tony Pollard's safe now? Do you think he's free? I feel like it would be weird for them to bring in Fournette when Zeke was right there. So I think maybe it's time that we take Pollard off the leash, let the big dog run.
Well, the thing with Fournette coming in, and I was thinking about this earlier, he's a really good pass blocker as well. And that
Right.
was a big asset that Zeke
Yeah.
offered. So I think even if they do sign Fournette, that it's not going to be as big of a fantasy blow to Pollard because, I mean, Zeke was there last year. Zeke did get 12 touchdowns, and Pollard still finished as a top 10 running back. I don't think that we really need to be worried about that caution tape because he's just so explosive, and that'll give him the opportunity to rest and not build up that wear and tear on his
I'm kind of
body.
talking about moving Pollard way up though. Like, I mean, if Fournette were to sign somewhere else, because I think Kareem Hunt's going to end up signing with one of the teams that may or may not be missing. He's already visited with the Bengals, right? So there's a chance that he goes and signs with a team like that, or if Mixon, who is now doing his court case thing, he misses a couple games. Kareem Hunt seems to be okay with that, whereas these other guys clearly were not. Shout out Scampers in the chat. Shout out Mark. What's up? Meeting Scampers, absolute highlight of this weekend, man. And we'll get to that with the expo. Scamp, make sure you stay with us because I got you on the show sheet already. We're gonna talk about that. But yeah, so With Pollard, I'm thinking about moving him way up, honestly, because if they're not going to bring anybody else in, there's been that thought in the back of a lot of our minds, me included, that maybe they could bring Zeke back, somebody else back. If they're not going to do that, I think we need to move him up to borderline first round territory. Like, if we get to September 2nd and there's no one else there, I don't see how I personally would even let the guy go past the swing, right? I mean, all the hypothetical drawbacks would be gone. So interesting to say the least.
Yeah, and they signed Zach Martin again yesterday, which we'll get to. We'll talk a little bit about that. But ESPN had their 27 fantasy football hour marathon. They have Pollard, I think, is the number 2 or number 3 back in fantasy
Yeah.
already. So they've already taken the caution tape off of him.
Yeah, they've done it. They've gone nuclear. I don't think I can go that crazy because, like, so there's certain situations that I can't put him ahead of. Like, number one would be Nick Chubb, right? We've been waiting forever for this Nick Chubb freedom, freedom, freedom. So we've been waiting forever for the Nick Chubb, George Michael freedom, but so I can't just move Pollard ahead because we've never fully seen Pollard yet. Whereas we've seen Chubb without Hunt, and it's always great. Sam Wagman, scam from the chat. What's up, gang? So yeah, I can't do that yet. And Earn Dog in the chat points out something important here. He is a Jets fan. Happy Brees Hall Day for those who celebrate. If you're a Jets fan, this is tremendous because now you can truly bring Brees Hall along slow. There's no pressure from obviously with Aaron Rodgers being signed, huge pressure to win now, right? And now with Dalvin Cook, you can bring him along slow, have a full 1-2 punch. It's great for fans. I'm a Patriots fan. I'm fired up to have Zeke. Brett, you know how long I've been a Zeke fan. Even my wife is like, we got the crop top boy. Like we got crop top boy in the house. I'm pumped up about it. But for fantasy football, not so good, right? So I actually just wrote an article with my full thoughts on both these players. That's on fantasyalarm.com right now. But the short and sweet, let's look at the Patriots. All our Pierre Strong and Ty Montgomery. Now we can officially stop mentioning Ty Montgomery's name forever, right, Brett? Howard Bender, you've won. I no more having to put money in the Ty Montgomery swear jar. We're gonna stop mentioning his name. And Pierre Strong also now is kind of on the outside, of course, right? So the question is, where do we move Ramondre down to? The way I look at it is this: Zeke, we move up, and he's going in round like 10, 11 right now. There's a group of guys that are likely going to have the same or similar role to David Montgomery. To what Zeke is, like David Montgomery maybe being the high end version of that. But I look around at like Brian Robinson, Jamal Williams, and I ask myself, do I take Zeke over these guys? Right? Because the Patriots, they got a pretty good line, got a pretty good setup there. So Zeke, how far are you moving him up? Jamal Williams or Zeke? Let's start with that.
I think I really like Zeke, to be honest, in this offense. Having a strong run game, I think will give Mac Jones that leash that he needs to operate with. He won't be forced to make errant throws and make bad passes. They can just go back to what they do and run the ball. Um, I'm moving him up. I like him over Williams just because I think that Kendre Miller has a legitimate chance of becoming the guy later on in the season. And even if Jamal Williams is better in the first half, I want the guy who's going to win me the championship. And I think that Kendre Miller becomes that guy. Whereas I think Zeke has that more consistent, fluid upside role.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of the he at least has, and that's the thing is he at least has half of that role, right? Whereas like Jamal Williams, it could end up being a third of the role. Jamal Williams could end up being in that backfield. He could be the Adrian Peterson. Remember when they had Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara and Adrian Peterson, and they just said, "Hey, we don't even need this guy." They traded him mid-season to the Cardinals, I believe it was. So that could end up being the case there. It's you over prepare for something that ended up being a 3-game suspension, which isn't so bad now. So then, with Ramondre, it's how far down are we moving him? The good news for him is that if Dalvin had gone there, or even Fournette, or even honestly Kareem Hunt, then those guys might project to be in the other role, the pass down role. And we know that, based on the work that guys like Scott Barrett did all the work already. That's the beautiful thing about this industry is sometimes you have to look around and the work's already done for you. Scott Barrett did the research that shows that even in standard leagues, a reception or even actually a target is more valuable than a carry, not just a reception, a target. And in full PPR, it's almost 2.7 times as valuable. So we want the guy in that rundown role, especially in any sort of PPR, sorry, pass down role. So you can still keep Ramondre among the big dogs, but I can't take him ahead of guys like Najee Harris now, right where I was before. Honestly, personally, I moved Miles Sanders ahead. You got to keep an eye on the groin situation there, but guys that have the full three down roll. So the question is, how far does the slide go, Britt? Joe Mixon's a tough one because we don't know with the legal stuff, so I'm going to leave him out for now. But let's say you're on the clock and you're looking at, say, I mean, do we go as far as like the James Conner and Rashad White crew, Britt?
No, you've got to keep Ramondre ahead of those guys just
Okay,
because
yeah.
of the offense, his pass catching ability. James Conner, sure, he's been the three down back, but I do not trust that offense as far as I can throw them collectively. I
Yeah.
mean, their practices have looked horrible.
Also, it's like we talk about not trying to be Dr. Fortune Teller, not trying to guess who gets hurt and who doesn't. But, like anything, you can bet on it, right? And if I'm going to bet on anybody to miss games, James Conner has quite literally never played a full season. So if I were going to play that game, that's where I would start, right? So, yeah, okay. How about, let's see, what else do we got here? How about, would you rather have Alexander Madison?
I still don't. I'm not sold on
I was
Madison.
never sold either.
I
Okay.
no. I'll
Let's
keep
get it. Let's
Ramondre.
look at some other split backs. How about this one? This is probably the toughest one. And where I think he inevitably should land right in that range is Aaron Jones. So Aaron Jones is going to have arguably the same role.
Yeah, I think that Aaron Jones was going too low to begin with. I would move him like maybe one spot above Ramondre, but it's very, very close.
It's almost the same dichotomy, right? Where you
Yeah.
almost can't like Aaron. If you like one, you almost have to like the other because AJ Dillon and Zeke probably about the same there. So all right, I like that landing spot for him. One last one: Travis Etienne or Ramondre Stevenson.
Ramondre.
Ooh, okay.
I am spicy. I'm spicy on the tank train.
The Tank Train is a spicy train, dude. Also, Tank Bigsby, amazing name. You got to root for it, dude. I'm always in on guys like Juice Scruggs. I want those guys around for a while because there's nothing better than a great football name. Colt McCoy, the ultimate letdown, because that's probably the greatest football name of all time, right?
I don't know. General Booty's pretty good.
General Booty's up there. General Booty's up there. I'm always partial to guys like Orlando Scandrick, like just ones that are that's Cowboy, one of your boys there.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ty Chandler to the moon. What's up, guys? We got people trickling in. Albert in the chat. Herms in the house. Good morning, Herms, man. It's crazy. I just seen these people the other day at the expo. Now we're back here locked in the internet again.
We're literally in our little boxes.
I know we're stuck in these little boxes again, but a little bit of the same. Okay, let's pivot over the Jets and that situation because that one is more drastic, right? I think this one's a little easier to figure out. And I'm honestly, Britt, I'm gonna hit you with the hard one right off the bat. Straight up, who would you rather have, Dalvin Cook or Breece Hall in fantasy?
I think this year in redraft, it's going to be Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
Just because of the efficiency drop off that you've seen in running backs, particularly coming back from ACL injuries in the first year. Not everybody's got Wolverine blood like Adrian Peterson. Like most of these guys, it's going to take a little while to get back. I think they still end up very similarly, but I like Cook's upside a little bit more, especially since he's probably going to be starting more games.
Yeah, man, it's tough, dude. Honestly, there's a Breece Hall, man. I don't even know. He could end up on the pup list. If he does, then it makes it easier to draft him, especially leagues with like IR spots. But even then, I probably just not taking any more Breece Hall. And I feel for the people in early best ball drafts and regular drafts that were taking him. I think he was going like RB 11 at times, RB 12, 13. So yikes on that one. These other guys, Michael Carter, but I wasn't really taking much Michael Carter anyway. He did have a bit of a pass role last year when Breece was out, but shame there. And Izzy Abanikanda, that's now it becomes a very deep dynasty stash. But Dalvin Cook, interesting. Would you rather have Ramondre Stevenson or Dalvin Cook?
I still have Ramondre over him.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. But I mean, it now it's crazy because they are going all in now. They have no reason not to go heavy with Dalvin, especially early on. So
Truly.
yeah. So if you are just barely dipping your toes into the waters of zero RB, Dalvin becomes that kind of guy where, if you want to spend up for your first RB in a zero RB, this is a guy that not only can you start probably most of the season, but he gives you that early season boost that every zero RB guy needs, because the whole goal is start guys that can give you something early on and then win on waivers. That's where the league is won. And people got to understand that that's really how the strategy works. Some people think you just punt the position and just figure it out. Like, you have to be incredibly active to make that strategy actually work. So Dalvin Cook kind of interesting for that, but I don't know, man. There's a
We're
world
gonna
where
have to
my
see how high his ADP goes
yeah.
before it actually falls in, because I have the feeling that it's gonna jump dramatically.
Yeah, Sam Wagman. I'm truly looking forward to going around to the streams today and see what everyone's voice sounds like. Yeah, I left at least half my voice in Canton, no question. Singing I left half my voice and half the skin from my knee at Jose's Landing on on Sunday. I cracked it to 11 and tore the knob off on Sunday. But we're back. It's Tuesday. It's time to rock and roll. So, Brett, any other news you got for us? His was something else. We can't just talk about two running backs whole news segment.
Yeah, for everybody who's been looking forward to this rookie, the Colts finally did it. They named Anthony Richardson the starter to begin the NFL season, which I'm super high on. I came around on Richardson after seeing his combine and seeing what they were talking about in rookie minicamp. So he did throw an interception, but he did show that arm cannon and arm strength that everybody's been talking about. So it's two sides of the same player, right? Does his errant arm concern you a little bit enough to shy away from some of these receivers, or is the talent upside enough for you to take a chance on him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in. I was already in because John and Pemba, our resident QB whisperer, he pointed out that look at Justin Fields. Like, you don't have to have crazy throwing numbers. In fact, he didn't even have the bare minimum throwing numbers. Like, his throwing numbers were leather helmet era. We haven't seen a team throw that few passes per game since 2003 Steelers, I believe, which is like literally 2 decades ago. So I have no problem with it. The question now becomes for me whether I take a second quarterback if I draft him. I'm willing to take Richardson. I'm at the point, even before this news, I was at the point where I was willing to take Richardson as my first quarterback. I would just wait until QB 10 or 11. I would take him, but I would always circle back and grab like Rodgers, start Rodgers week 1 on Monday night against Buffalo for what, should be a bit of a shootout, right? Or Kirk Cousins or Jared Goff. Now the question is, do we even have to do that, Britt? So are you willing to go Anthony Richardson, you and Anthony Richardson against the world, or are you circling back and taking one of those boring guys, which in theory we always talk about, well, it's very safe, but it comes at the expense of a range where you could still be drafting a breakout player that could affect the rest of your lineup. So
Yeah,
where you
I
at,
think
Brett?
I'm still taking a second quarterback. And we even saw last year with Justin Fields, right? It took him till what, around week 5, if I
Right.
remember correctly, to actually like get cranked up and get going. So at the end of the season, he had this crazy upside and was just blowing everybody out of the water. But it did take him some time to get there. So I think that you're good starting that safer guy early on in the season while Richardson gets kind of up to game speed, gets the feel, and then at the end of the season, you can drop that safe quarterback and just like turn Richardson loose.
Yeah, no, I feel that. And Jack in the chat here, good question. He says, who are your favorite targets for Richardson? We actually had a question on the show sheet for later, but I want to skip to that right now, in fact, while we got a question in the chat here. So Michael Pittman is locked in. He actually led the entire league in snap share last year at wide receiver. Like, this guy was playing flat out 100% of the snaps at times. He had like 6 or 7 games with 97% or more. So he's in there, right? After that, they had Paris Campbell playing the slot. And when they went to 2 wide receiver sets, he would stay out there. So in 3 wide, he was slot, and then he would move to flanker for 2 wide. Very similar to how guys like Chris Godwin or Keenan Allen or Cooper Kupp were deployed. He's not those guys, so he didn't really put up those numbers, but that's the usage we like to see. That's kind of the perfect world usage for a wide receiver. Alec Pierce was the guy coming out. Well, now we have a rookie set to play that slot role. So, Britt, that's really the question, right? So we're betting on Pittman. We like Pittman. After that, there's probably only room for one other guy, whether it's one of those 2 guys, if they can get a full snap share, or maybe even your boy Jelani Woods there. So If you're taking stabs, Britt, who do you like? If you're like, say you're going to take Anthony Richardson, a lot of these guys are cheap. You should probably pair at least one of them with him, right?
Yeah, totally. In our Queen's Classic, little spoiler alert, Alec Pierce and Josh Downs went back to back.
Ooh,
I ended
really?
up getting Downs. It was way deep in the draft. Um, I was looking at Pierce because, he's the bigger athletic receiver. He profiles as more of that outside guy. But Josh Downs is so shifty and has that speed that Shane Steichen loves. So I think that they could both actually be uh, fantasy viable, especially if Jonathan Taylor in that situation doesn't get sorted out and they end up having to pass more. And because unless they sign somebody and bring them in, that run game is very, very scary if
Yeah.
if Taylor sits out.
Right. Yeah, that would be problematic for sure. I had Brandon Huffman on the show that he even before the draft was talking Josh Downs up big time. The way I'm handling it is if I'm in like a shallow home team draft where ADP doesn't even make it to Josh Downs, what I'm doing is I'm just taking Alec Pierce and knowing that I can pivot to Downs off waivers. If you're in a deeply, I mean, if you're in the Queen's Classic, that's a deep, sharp industry league live, then you have to pick one or the other. In which case, I might actually wait and pick Downs at ADP. But in an ideal world, you can actually take Pierce, who gets drafted, and then if week one, I do the snap count article every week, and I'll tell you straight up, I'll say this guy played all the snaps, go get him, or Pierce is the guy getting the full snap, so keep him. But that's what we're doing. If your league is probably 14 or 15 rounds, you can get away with that. Anything higher, like the Queen's Classic, then it's probably not going to happen. Especially, underdog, things like that. You're going to have to go in and make a decision, and you're going to have to go in and use promo code ALARM when you sign up at Underdog. They'll match up to $100 first time deposit, and you can jump in and start playing with us. So anyway, that's probably it for news today, Brett, unless you have anything else pressing that you wanted to hit on.
Well, Scampers brought it up in the chat. Mike Gesicki has a dislocated shoulder, and he was getting, some training camp buzz. Scampers asks if it matters. I
Yeah,
don't I don't
absolutely.
know. I think that it does. I think that they're downplaying the damage because there's going to be some AC joint damage in there. I don't know if you can just say, "Hey, this is going to be healed in 3 weeks." And then over the past week or so, Hunter Henry's been getting some buzz too.
Steamed
So if
up.
he's looking good, why are we rushing back Gesicki?
Right, exactly. And it certainly matters for the distribution of snaps. That's where it matters because when you think about who they have and what they do, right? If it was going to be a two tight end offense with Hunter Henry in line and Gesicki in the slot, then you would have Devontae Parker as a split end, and it pushes Juju out wide to play flanker, which people say, oh, that's not who he is. But Jacoby Myers, Julian Edelman, Wes Welker, if you really go back and look, those guys played just as many snaps out wide as they did in line. It's like we just talked about with Campbell, where they don't ever leave the field. They move in the slot, they move out wide, but they don't come out. If Gesicki's gone, now that probably brings Juju inside and makes Tyquan Thornton a factor as the outside field stretcher, right? Right now, the concern is he's only going to play a partial snap share, but if you only have one tight end, then now it's 3 wide receiver time. They don't use a fullback anymore ever since he was poached away to the Raiders. They use Jakob Johnson was their tight end before, so they don't use one anymore. So if they're not using a tight end, then it's 3 wide time. So it is interesting, and of course Gesicki goes from a guy that we probably weren't drafting anyway, but now he's definitely just a watch list guy, right? If he's going to be hurt and not playing. But Scamp is right. It's good for Hunter Henry. It's good for Juju. Devontae Parker was always just going to be Devontae Parker, but it's good for Tyquan Thornton, right? Because it gives you some clarity in terms of snaps. Whereas the real concern for this team is that no one's going to play every snap and everyone's going to rotate, and then that's how you get no fantasy relevant players.
Well, so I'm going to actually say I've been watching the training camp battle between Kendrick Bourne and Tyquan Thornton really closely.
Mm,
And it looks like Kendrick Bourne is actually jumping Thornton in that depth chart. So
wow.
keep your eye on that. Thornton also, I think, no, I'm confused. I still have tired brain. But he's not looking good is the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And so if you're looking for somebody in those deep leagues, make sure that you keep your eye on those training camp battles as we get closer.
Yeah, the people in the chat want it, dude. Hunter in the hen house, baby. Let's go. I mean, the thing with Hunter Henry is that he is so good versus man to man. And that's why he still, despite the low powered offense, can still get the touchdowns because in that red area, whenever it goes zero coverage, right, it's one on one. Some guys can win, some guys can't. That's the one part of Kyle Pitts' game that he needs to step up. And a guy like Julio Jones was like honestly never that good at that one part of the game too. That was like the one thing for Julio Jones that he wasn't as amazing at. Whereas some of these guys, like uh, Adam Thielen, incredible at it, right? Just getting away with pushing off without it getting called. So, which is it's a skill. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And Kendrick Bourne, of course, Matt Patricia was a guy that didn't like him. So it's interesting that you bring that up. Now that he's gone, we know that the ownership came down to the field and said put Kendrick Bourne in there, and it was Patricia that was kind of like no. So maybe the changeover of the guard here has Kendrick Bourne back in their favor. So interesting thing to look at there.
Yeah, totally. Maybe let's see. I don't think there's really anything else. Well, Brees Hall is coming off pup, so
Yeah,
it
let's
is
hit
Happy Brees Hall Day
injury
for
stuff.
everybody.
Injury stuff, right? Brees Hall, Mike Gesicki. What's going on with Hawkinson? What's the situation with that?
Well, he said that he held out of training camp because he had an ear infection, which I'm thinking if that was the case, why didn't they just come out and say it? Why were they being so mum about the situation? And my skeptical brain is like, there's some more behind this story. Was there a little drama going on? Right now, we have to take it at face value, I guess, because that's what they're saying. And unless we're in their circle, we're not going to find anything else out. But it is just a little
Yeah,
shady.
it is. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, I don't know. The thing is, the industry, the injury disclosure rules at this point, they're not as like during the season, you have to say like, oh yeah, this guy is out and this is why. But now you don't really have to. So hey, maybe it was just a case that they were hoping it cleared up, and then every day it didn't. They had already gone so many because if he misses one practice with an ear infection, you don't say anything. But it ended up just being so long that maybe they turned around and was like, "Hey, we thought this would clear up. It didn't." But I guess now he's back, so I'm not too worried about it. And then Cordell Patterson, we saw with the soft tissue injury. I don't. He was already pretty far off my radar as is. So um,
Yeah,
Tyler
I think that's
Algier,
minor.
yeah, I don't think it really matters much. We already knew what the deal was over there. Bijan City, baby.
And well, we'll just say, yes, I'm very high on Bijan and Algier
Yeah.
when we look at the Queen's Classic.
Yeah, why not? Like Algier's a guy that I'm willing to take still. Like if you I don't mind grabbing the guys that we have seen do it because when they get back in there, they look good. Like Elijah Mitchell is another one where yes, he's injury prone, but when he's healthy, he looks good. And even when he's healthy with CMC, he might even be a handcuff plus. I don't know, Britt. There are worlds where those guys crack lineups. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and they're going to want to keep Bijan fresh. They run the ball enough that they're going to be plenty of rotations in and out of the game, and that could give Algier independent value.
Yeah.
I personally love it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk a little Expo, and then we'll wrap. We'll talk just a little bit about the Expo, and then we'll get into the Queen's Classic draft, and then we'll leave this weekend behind and get back to the season coming up, man. Because Expo, ton of fun, always so good to see everybody. But at the end of the day, what we're really looking for is 3 weeks from now we got kickoff. Less than a month. Less than a month. Fantasy football is here. Let's go.
So excited. I'm so ready.
Yeah. So let me ask you, Britt, about the Expo. First thing before we get into the other details. Obviously, as a Cowboys fan, you got to meet Dez Bryant. How cool was that?
Oh my gosh, it was so awesome. Just kind of one of those moments that you don't really remember if it's real or not, or if you just dreamed it. And of course, I, like everybody, told him that he caught the ball, and I'm sure he's heard that a million times. But I told him that it was going to be my dying words, and if I said Dez caught it and then croaked, I would be fine. He cracked up, he grabbed me from behind and hugged me, and he's like, "Yes, absolutely, we could get a picture." Like, just making him laugh. He was so genuine and nice to everybody, and just seeing how he acted and interacted with everybody, seeing how he talked up the expo after he left on Twitter, seeing how he's following everybody that he met at the expo is just a pretty awesome situation to be a part of.
Yeah, he's a G, man. At one point, I remember like these kids came over, they were wearing Des Bryant jerseys, and not only did he take pictures with them, he autographed all the jerseys, and then afterwards, he grabbed all I think it was like 4 or 5 different kids that were there, grabbed all of them and said, "Let's all get a picture together with all the Des jerseys," and throwing the X's up and stuff, so it's like, he like, that's the going above and beyond. There was no person, there were no, he didn't turn down any pick requests. I gave him a fist bump, dude said what up. So I mean, it was nice, man, to see him out there doing it like that because not everybody does that. That's the thing that we take for granted. And think of how long he's been doing it too, right? Like he's been doing this a long time, and still he sits down and he's like, that's the difference, is when he's the one coming up with the stuff and being creative, right? Like, and he was going out of his way to do everything. I mean, although at one point, Britt, he did actually steal your spot on your segment on a show, did he not?
I am not going to say anything to get bumped for Des Bryant. And he still talked up Traylon Burks, which was probably what I was going to do anyway. Just a lot cooler person doing it.
Just went off the show sheet. Yeah, that's awesome, man. That it was too funny that it's like, Britt, you would have been salty if anyone bumped you except Des Bryant.
Can confirm. Just going to say that. Can
So
confirm.
I'll say, and I kind of alluded to it earlier on the show, but dude, meeting Mr. Scampers and Dame Overboard, that was top notch. And I had a theory. I actually wasn't sure if Mr. Scampers was a real person. There was a long time where I thought that I was like, this guy, how can he be everywhere in all the chats, all over the place? And I was like, this has got to be some like joint account that's run by JL and Simon and Joey and everybody. But meeting Scampers and talking to him, there's no doubt in my mind that Scampers is real and he's exactly as genuine as you would imagine and exactly as funny. And so is Dame. Like those two absolute goats out here in this industry. And just to run into people and see people out there like that I only know from the internet, it's a special thing. So anyone that's wonder considering whether to go next year or not, absolutely go. DM me if you're going to go, and we'll meet up and chat. And I'll introduce you to as many people as I can. I mean, it is just a crazy whirlwind, so it's kind of hard to do stuff like that. But no question, like it is such a great thing to meet people in person, and I absolutely try my best to make myself available to everybody because that's what this is all about. It's all about hanging out with your buddies from the internet in real life, which it's a beautiful thing, Britt.
It was so good. And it was so cool to have people come up to me who I didn't think watched me and talk her story up. Be like, I really enjoy the work that you're doing with that and the attention that you're bringing to women in the industry. And I was like, you watch my show? Oh my God. Like it was a surreal experience. And then also to know that other people in the industry have your back, to meet the fans, incredible,
Right.
because we wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for the fans and
Yeah.
talking to them. Wendy was there. Tootsie Pop, Rachel was there. Meeting
So
Wendy
good.
was so wonderful. Lisa Ann, just man, it was so crazy.
So good. I'll
Everybody.
tell you one that I had a chance. So I went and covered the Queen's Classic and the IDP draft and all that stuff. And I had a chance to talk with Greg Kellogg for a long time. And we did a quick video, but I honestly, over the course of the time we were there, I just kept going over and chatting it up with him because he's a Fantasy Sports Writing Association Hall of Famer. And he's been doing this forever. And the stories of that he was telling me, it reminds me a lot of what we do, except the way they had to do it early in the industry, just like him talking to Bob Harris on the phone, but they only have one phone line, so like like they're staying up there, they have to like set time and stay up late. And he was telling me that like he's like, you guys talk about technology, and he's like, all the technology that's going to come out in your lifetime is going to blow people's minds. He's like, I remember I was excited when they came up with an extra long phone cord so that I could go in the other room and not bother my whole family talking about fantasy football into the wee hours of the night. He's like, that's the innovation that I saw. And then now we're seeing this, and it's even crazier. And he's like, and he's on Twitter and everything, so he's still doing all of it. But it's just so amazing to talk to guys like that, like legitimate legends in this industry, telling about the tales of the pen and paper fantasy industry and how it started and where it's at now. Like getting to talk to guys like that is crazy. So shout out Greg Kellogg, man. I wish I had more time to talk to him. I think we talked combined probably for a full half hour, but my God, that guy's got some stories, and it's crazy what this industry has become from what it was then. Just some silly game.
Yes, I mean, it really is. And Scott Engel was still there. Got to talk to him. He ran the expert mock draft. And then, if you guys have never seen Scott karaoke, oh my goodness,
Beast.
that man is on fire. He is so good and has so much advice and so much experience in this industry, and will still come up and introduce himself to you. You don't have to go seek him out. And that genuineness and willingness to help the community grow as a whole is just it's something that can't be beat.
Yeah, man. So absolute blast. As far as events and stuff go, what did you like, Britt? What were some of the I'll tell you one that I did this year that I can't believe I didn't do the year before, which was the draft night out thing. Maybe I was turned off because they call it draft night out, even though it's at like noon. And I'm like, because I'm just thinking like, oh, am I gonna go out and do this? But it's the middle of the day. But that was great, man. Just so many live drafts all at once happening. Everybody, hanging out, having some apps, drinking some beers, and just a full room of drafts. And you can walk around, see everybody else's boards, see what's going on. It just that's the type of environment that I didn't go the year before, and because I wasn't in the drafts, but I wasn't even in them this year, and I just went and popped in there. And that's the expo needs more of that, like just big rooms filled with people just doing fantasy drafts, talking ball. That was really cool. So that's something that I'm going to do every year now for sure. Is go to that, and maybe I'll even get in a draft. But I kind of felt I kind of love the fact that I wasn't in a draft and I could just walk around and like make fun of Skylar's pick and or like Will just walking around talking a little trash. I think that's better because then I don't have a team that people can make fun of. It gives me free reign to walk around. But yeah, that was so cool getting everybody together like that. What about you, Britt? What are some of the events that you like from the expo?
Yeah, I actually showed up at the end of draft night out because our Queen's Classic ran a little bit late. But it did look so amazing. The flag football tournament was just crazy fun. I
It
mean,
really
these
was.
guys were getting it. Like
Yeah.
they were putting everything on the field. I saw one guy like run off the edge of the field into the bleachers and then just pop right up and come back out there. Like it was intense. There were some good plays out there. We found out that Des Bryant throws lefty, which we didn't know before.
So I actually knew that.
Did you?
I
I
knew
did
that
not.
just from I remember back I had him and DeMarco Murray in 2016. They were my first two picks back to back. I took Dez in the first round, DeMarco in the second round, and I won my league that year. But I watched a ton of games and I noticed that he throws the ball when you throw the ball to the refs or whatever, he would do it. He would always do it lefty. So I knew that one. I didn't know he was going to play quarterback at the Expo though. But yeah, spoiler alerts to everybody out there. Dez Bryant's team won the flag football tournament. I'm not sure if that even qualifies as a spoiler. But yeah, man, he can chuck, huh? His pump fake is mean.
It looked so
He was
good.
beating people up with that pump fake. He
Oh
really
yeah.
was, dude. Yeah, because I mean, when you got hands that big, you can really let it rock. But yeah, he was smoking people with that. So that was really
Yeah.
cool to see, man.
That and then karaoke. Man, I wish that I would have made it to Jose's, but then I doubt that I would have made my flight.
Yeah.
So I decided to go back to the room. But even at the DoubleTree, man, one guy who puts on a great show, Eric Froton.
Oh
I
yeah,
oh my goodness. Like, he was running across the room. By the end of his song, he jumped up on top of tables and was, like, fist pumping the air, and if you haven't met Froton or seen pictures, he's kind of a giant anyway.
he's a big
So when
guy.
he's
Yeah.
standing on tables, like, he's fist pumping the ceiling almost. Man, he had that place going, and it was so
Yeah,
amazing.
he crushed. Jake Trowbridge also. No one should be surprised when he crushes. What did you get up and do a song at that one?
I did 2, and then I did, a duet with Lauren Carpenter.
I'm
Yeah,
sure you brought the house down
it was pretty
with your
fun.
voice there. I got up at Jose's Landing, but tell you what, probably had too many soda pops by that point. So not my best performance. Next year, I'm gonna really take it more seriously. Maybe do a little less hydrating before I get up there. But I had a blast either way, rocking and rolling over there. So good stuff, man. And the thing is, what stinks is that not everyone can go every year. So they're just I couldn't help but think of a couple of the fantasy besties, JB Barry, Jordan Loop that weren't there. Chris Sellers, man, he has to go next year. I will personally drive from the expo to pick him up if I have to, but he will be there. So, but yeah, shout out everybody. Please come next year. 100% good time. Yeah, McGonagall has it right. Those soda pops really impacted karaoke. I think it was it might have been the soda pops, might have been the $7 pours of Weller 107 Antique that was the real problem. So
Oh man. Yeah, that sounds
I mean
amazing and horrible.
at that price, it would be fiscally irresponsible for me not to have a few of them. So, it was kind of a budgeting thing that but yeah, that's what happened. And Herms in his bourbon era got up there and was putting in some work too. So we got it done out there. But yeah, that was a good time. Absolutely.
And they already have dates scheduled for next year, so you can already start planning it. The
What's the
dates
date?
are the 9th through the 11th. Yeah, they're
Oh,
already out there. They're up on the website.
that's perfect. I was worried that it would be like late July, like because my now that's the thing about going to the expo after your daughter's born is that now her birthday is always in the danger zone, right? But so her birthday now is July 30th, so we're safe. We're safe. That's plenty of time, right?
That works. Yeah,
Even I
that works.
mean, if you really think about it, that's more than 9 days. So we have a weekend in there to have a party. Plus, she'll be one. She won't even remember that party.
Oh man, don't let Kate hear you say that.
Anyway, let's break out. Let's look at the Queen's Classic draft. You were in that one. I can pull it up. Actually, that would probably make for better content than just talking about it. What do you say, Brett?
Yeah, I think there would be a lot more context behind it if we could see
There'd be
the
some
draft board.
value if I were to do that. Okay, let me get it going here. And let's put us
Yeah,
on the side. Can you see that
perfect.
all right? If you can't, everybody out there, you're just gonna have to deal with it. We're gonna talk with we're gonna talk about these picks for this draft here, man. So we had Sam Holt, Kendall Valenzuela, Casey Kasem, Linda Godfrey, Jen Polvolt, Faith Ennis, Kelly Singh, Bonnie Robinson, Lisa Ann, Gemma Martinez, Julia Papworth, Lauren Carpenter, Britt Flynn, Maddie Kroll, a murderer's row of drafters here. And uh, here's how crazy this draft was. There was like Matt Deutsch kept telling me to go up there and talk about like he's like talk about this draft. I'm like, this thing is like so airtight, it's so chalk. Like there's not like I had to wait a little like for the first 3-4 rounds, it was just there was no moment where I could be like, oh, this was a big mistake, or this is it was just a very, very clean draft. But it did turn out that there were some interesting, of course, as you can see here, some interesting moments, some strategies, right? So Brett, let's just talk about your team first. You went Bijan, Garrett Wilson, Lamar Jackson, DJ Moore, Darren Waller. So pretty diversified. You didn't lean into zero RB or wait on any individual position. Uh, of those first five, which one did you feel best about? And were there any of them where you just like, the feeling where you kind of have to take somebody, but it's not the guy you love? So how do you feel about those first five?
Yeah, Bijan falling all the way to 13 was insane to me
Wild, right?
because I thought he was going to go way earlier. Saquon Barkley went off the board before him. Nick Chubb went off the board before him. CMC falling all the way down to what was that, 9? I mean, wild that he fell
Yeah.
that way. Um,
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, like, but the thing is, I was to me, it felt a little crazy, but then when I really started thinking about it, full PPR, sure, if you want to take Austin Eckler one. There's not really a problem with that. And Nick Chubb, we talked about how much we like him, and I know Bonnie obviously plugged into our crew, the hashtag family and the fantasy alarm, and she's plugged in than just that. But she came up to me and she was like, "Got Chubb, right?" Because like Howard Bender's been all about it. I'm all about it. So I honestly have no problem with any of those picks. And also Saquon over Bijan. I Even if I'm not doing it, which at times I actually would, but I have no problem with it. So I guess the one that stood out maybe was Amon-Ra St. Brown going where he did, but again, it's full PPR. So the arguments for it are uh, they're just as big as the arguments against it. And in a draft like this, there's no guarantee that he comes back around. And she also got Devontae Adams in the next round, so it didn't even matter almost.
yeah, it's full PPR and 3 receivers plus 3 flexes. So, I mean, if you can get those targets in early, then the end of your draft looks a lot more solid. I was more worried about finding running back depth where there might be some good value at receiver, tight end, things like that later on. So that's why I went ahead and grabbed Bijan for an anchor. And I waited, what is that, all the way till round 8
Yeah,
to
you
pick up another one.
you wrote the Anchor RB article in the Fantasy Alarm draft guide, available now. So go over to fantasyalarm.com slash NFL guide, and you can get the draft guide now. And you wrote an article on this exact strategy and you executed it perfectly, right? So that's I mean, that's why we do all the off-season research. And what I do, same thing you do, Britt, is we learn all these strategies. You learn, you write about that one. Kev writes zero RB. I read them all. I do my yin yang tight end. And then that way you take what comes to you and pivot to those strategies. So you were prepared because Antonio Gibson is in the article, is he not?
Yep, I do talk about him, and I'm surprised that he is still out there and hasn't really risen in ADP because he, especially in PPR, he's going to get that work. That's been what he does. Sam Howell, we've already kind of seen it. He's developed more of a chemistry with Jahan Dotson rather than Terry McLaurin because he runs those shorter routes, and that's where Sam Howell's bread and butter is.
Right.
So
100%. So
the one pick that I was a little weird about, TJ Hawkinson was still floating out there with Darren Waller, but I took Darren Waller instead.
yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that because I love Darren Waller, and I have Darren Waller ranked ahead of TJ Hawkinson at 3, and that's simply because with Waller, for Waller to not be a top 2 target on the team, you have to make arguments for multiple wide receivers, and I really can't do that. Like, if people want to make an argument for Isaiah Hodgins over Darren Waller in the red zone, I would say no, and also stop doing that. But if you wanted to make that argument, fine. Then now you have to turn around and make another argument for Wanda Robinson to make a miraculous recovery from an ACL and be ready to go right away, or one of the million slot guys, Paris Campbell, Cole Beasley, Sterling Shepard, all these guys to really pop, or maybe for Jalen Hyatt to just come out and be he is a Fred Blitnikoff Award winner. They don't just give those out, but as a rookie to just dominate targets, I think Waller, that situation is much more clear compared to everyone has Justin Jefferson 1. So now it's Hawkinson versus Addison versus KJ Osborne to some degree, where I still like Hawk to win that out, and that's why I have him at 4. But it's not as safe of a place to live. Where I thought it was interesting here is anyone seeing the board right here. Kelsey went 1, Andrews 2, Hawk ADP wise goes tight end 3. Here he fell to tight end 7, right? And we actually had Jen on video on the clock when she made that pick. I was like interviewing her, and I was she's a friend of ours, so I was like razzing her a little bit. I was like, you're gonna be all nervous. You're gonna make a pick live on our air, and it ended up being the most easy possible pick ever. Where she didn't have a tight end yet. The tight end, quote unquote, 3 or 4 or 5, wherever you have him, falls to tight end 7. So pretty easy pick there for her. I think that getting a pick like that really makes you feel good about your team, right?
Oh, 100%. And I mean, just for transparency, I was looking at taking Hawkinson, but for the reasons that you mentioned, I think Waller gets more targets. I think that he could be the actual number 1 on the team instead of just the number 2, which is, where the threshold is. So, yeah, it hurt to pass up on value, but I couldn't do it there.
Yeah, well, tight ends in general slid here. I mean, Kittle didn't go till the 4th, and you got Waller as the tight end 6, which, like I said, I have him ranked 3 or 4. I only care about upside. Like, I'll piece together off waivers if I have to. So yeah, great value there. Just very interesting how it goes. But those guys almost always go in the top 7. But the orders are changing. The times are changing. So if you want to get on the Waller train, you got to start getting there earlier. That's my advice to people out there. You can't always get lucky like Britt Flynn and have him fall in your lap that deep in the draft there. But anyway, let's talk about some of these other teams. One team I found interesting was Sam Holt's team. Sam Holt's team I like a lot. That one, when I'm going through, besides yours, Britt, because we're Fantasy Alarm and we talk a lot of these players, right? Besides your team, her team looks the most like one I would draft. She went Justin Jefferson at 1, Chris Olave, Travis Etienne, Drake London, Kenneth Walker, Marquise Brown, Isaiah Pacheco. Not necessarily the players exactly, although I do like a lot of those players, but just the way she did it, where she said, hey, you know what? Tight ends are sliding, QB sliding a little bit. I'll figure that out later. She went maybe a little bit risky at QB, double tapping the rookie QBs, but I like doing what she did. I would be happy with Anthony Richardson and David Njoku as my starting tight end and my quarterback, and then Luke Musgrave is a guy I'm taking stabs on. Why can't he be a top 2 target on the team? CJ Stroud, I might have taken a second QB earlier. That's me personally. I probably would have gone like Anthony Richardson and then paired him with like a Jared Goff or Daniel Jones or somebody. But hey, in a league like this, might as well go big. So Richardson, Stroud, how do you feel, Britt? Is that too spicy for you? Are you okay with that?
Well, I think taking a quarterback over or before Stroud might have been her strategy. Um, and then if you look at those 2 rounds before, I mean, we just went on a QB run and just completely depleted the board. Right after she made the Stroud pick, she leaned over and goes, "I'm putting a lot of faith in these rookies."
Yeah, yeah, that's
So I
pretty
don't
bold.
think
Yeah,
that it turned out exactly how she planned. But like we were talking about earlier with Richardson's floor, with that rushing ability that he has, I see him finishing as a legit QB1. And then by the time the Colts bye week rolls around, Stroud will have been in the system long enough to have picked everything up, and you'll know whether or not he's going to be the guy. There are going to be quarterbacks dropped to waivers. If he doesn't work out, then you can find, a fill in here and there. I actually like this team a lot. It is very risky, but in a 14 teamer, you're not winning with safe. You're winning with risk and upside. And that's what these guys have.
exactly. I just wish, honestly, I wish every asshole from Twitter could have been in this room, right? All the jerks that are like, "Oh, she's a girl or whatever," like could have been in this room to see like the how this draft went. It would have been. Did you ever hear of the Brian Scalabrine, the Scallenge, what he did, where he was so tired of people talking trash to him in Boston that he had a open open invite one-on-one event where you could come out and play him one-on-one. And they actually set it up and did it with the Sports Hub, the radio, and he just demolished every one of these guys one at a time. No one could do a single thing. They called it the Scallenge, and you can go out and check clips from that. That's what it would be like if some of these Twitter trolls would come out and try and do a draft like this, because it was incredible watching the action here, and the fact that every strategy under the sun had to be pulled out and deployed because of the way the draft went. Like you had Sam Holt waiting on QB and tight end. You had Matty Kroll going 0 RB. Faith pulled out the stack. Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen. Casey came out and very interesting strategy, the tight end QB right off the bat. But in a 14-team league, that's honestly an incredibly viable strategy because of the positional scarcity you run into, where tight end somebody is starting tight end 14, and in this case, it takes a couple, like you went Greg Dulcich. That means that somebody out there is starting tight end 15 as their tight end 1 or tight end 16 as their tight end 1, right? If you go bully tight end on somebody in a 14-team league, you kind of rug pull them pretty hard. So all these different strategies being deployed. I just wish people, the Twitter trolls of the world, would have realized in that moment that they were in way over their head, going up against actual professionals.
Yeah, 100%. And it was competitive within that room between each other. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, it was crazy.
there were like, I'm going to fight you. I'm going to go beat you up.
The snipes and the trash talk
Yeah,
and
the snipes, the trash,
yeah.
everything. There were lots of good t-shirt slogans thrown out in the form of some responses to the
Yeah,
sniping. It was great. It
it
was
was
so
funny, and
much
I
fun.
was out there throwing jabs too, of course, because gotta get
That's
my
what
2
you
cents.
do.
Spencer's got a question in the chat. I think it's a really good one. He says, "Good day, guys. What do y'all think is the biggest difference in this year's draft compared to last year's?" A PPR drafter, by the way, Britt. So, have you been noticing any big differences? I'll tell you personally, wide receivers flying off the board, especially in PPR, Spencer. So,
That's
keep an eye on
exactly what
that.
I was going to say. It's people are punting running backs more and more often, and it's at that point when you can find value, and then you can employ like an a robust running back strategy, and then you just zig when others zag. I know that that saying is kind of overused, but it does have its merits. And when wide receivers are going off the board and they're leaving all of these good running backs in a position that is fairly scarce, you can take advantage of that.
Exactly. It's about striking at the right time. Like if you can catch the beginning of the wave, and I think that Faith actually did a good job of this, where she at the beginning of the wave, she gets a quarterback, gets a QB, and gets another wide receiver. knowing that wide receivers are getting pushed up the board, she was able to get a couple of them early in the wave and then correctly pivoted to running back instead of continuing to get stuck in the right when you're like, I mean, look at that spot there where she got Aaron Jones while other people were taking Brandon Ayuk and Tyler Lockett and Terry McLaurin. That's how you use it to your advantages. If you can get the front part of the wave and then pivot while everybody else is panicking, you can get some value there. I mean, James Cook, another guy I like, so I think she did a pretty good job of that. So definitely that's a big difference this year. The other one, Spencer, I'll say is that QBs are getting pushed up. And I think best ball has a lot to do with that. Again, Faith deployed it here. And, you know, if you hit, you hit. But a lot of people in best ball know they have to win a tournament with 3,000 people, right? So you have to do things that on a weekly basis are going to have huge spike weeks. And stacking is a big part of that. So you see the guy that takes Diggs, he takes Josh Allen. The guy that takes AJ Brown takes Jalen Hurts. The guy that takes Jamar, because of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Joe Burrow never makes it very far. Because of the stacking aspect of best ball, it's moving those picks up. So that's something you have to keep an eye out for. I personally have been waiting a bit on QB, not getting too crazy with having to get my stacks. But I mean, look at this. Patrick Mahomes won the first round in this one. And by the end of the third round, there were 6 QBs gone. That's not normal, right, Brett?
No, that it's not normal. But also, this is a 14 teamer, and we know that waivers are going to be a lot more scarce. But they are seeming to go quite a bit earlier than they have in years past. I remember, you could wait until round 6 or 7 and get a great value on quarterback. If you wait that long now, you're kind of scraping like some borderline iffy QB1, QB2 territory.
Yeah. So, I mean, in the 14 man, it makes a lot more sense. And right, the 14 taking Patrick Mahomes in the 14 man really helps you sleep easy at night, right? So I could see that. Yeah. Anything else from this draft, Britt, before we pop in the next segment? I mean, like Lisa Ann, for instance, hard to argue with taking last year's 101 and 102 with their first 2 picks. So pretty interesting start there. Anything else? Any other teams that you liked outside of yours or interesting moves you thought?
I will say, being crunched in between Lauren and Maddie, Maddie sniped me 3 times. I'm not even kidding. Coming back around on that turn, oh my gosh, it was the most painful. And then Lauren sniped me a couple times. Being at the end of a draft of a 14 teamer is hard enough, especially, but being in between those two, I'm like, man, I wish I had their team. Like, I like my team, but I also like their team.
That's how you know you're drafting sharp people. That's how I felt leaving the Scott Fish Bowl. I was looking at the board at the Scott Fish Bowl. I was like, based on my own rankings, my team isn't even the best, right? Nothing. I mean, I know everybody there. They thought it was funny to print out my rankings because I made them available, my Scott Fish Bowl rankings. But still, like even based on my rankings, my team wasn't the best. That's how it goes with these sharp drafts sometimes, and that's why it's good to look at them. Doing these makes me feel so much better about my hometown leagues, where now I'm getting all the guys I wanted, and everybody's drafting chasing last year and doing all that stuff. But anyway, that was the Queens Classic. That draft is available. Britt, you tweeted it out, right? Or if not, you will at some point, just so people can take a look at the board.
Yeah, we can tweet it out today after the show. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get that one tweeted out so you guys can check it all out there. We're going to hear from our buddies at FYF real quick. And then after that, we're coming back and we're talking about the preseason stuff, what matters, what doesn't. We're going to do some hypothetical trades that we would like to see in that, either for real life football or for fantasy football. And we'll also get into some of the questions we want to see answered early on in the season. So let's hear from the guys at FYF and we'll be right back.
I feel like this is a quietly contentious point in Dynasty Fantasy Football, what it means to actually be rebuilding. Some people say you should never truly be rebuilding. How do you view the rebuilding versus competing dichotomy in Dynasty?
So I will be the first person to acknowledge that my preferred format of fantasy football is just redraft. The years that I have played Dynasty, it has been, I've drafted a win now team because I've seen people that have just gotten into the cycle of rebuilding and thus they just don't make any progress. So I if you're rebuilding for the 5th year in a row, I just, I don't know exactly how you get out of it. But yeah, it's definitely something that can happen. And a lot of people, especially when we come out of the NFL draft, everyone's just instantly shipping off, draft picks and everything. So I mean, it's definitely something that can happen.
Joey, do you feel similarly to it? Do you feel like you see people getting stuck in the rebuilding loop?
I mean, I would say people that try to rebuild in the beginning of seasons, of their fantasy seasons, I see them get stuck in that rut. I would really try to only ever rebuild if I knew I was going to miss the playoffs. Like, I'm always trying to play to win, even if it's maybe I don't know.
I think my big thing is the word rebuild is a much shorter time frame than I think most people say it should be. Like, they look at rebuild as like 3 years out competing. Rebuild, you're looking to compete next season. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing it now, you're looking to revamp, and maybe there's a one season where you ship it off, but that very next season you should be competing. If you're doing it like that, I'm cool with it, but you gotta have a plan, not just keep getting the young players, keep getting the draft picks. Otherwise, you end up like Tim. Maybe not like Tim who gets a bye, but you make the playoffs, you're in that like 4 to 6 range every year, just hovering in the middle. Nothing ever gets better, nothing ever gets worse.
I think I play like you in Dynasty, Simon. I play in 3-year windows.
100%. That's my go-to. And with the rate at which Dynasty leagues turn over, you should really only ever play in a 3-year window.
Let's go, dude.
You've got the moves. I'm still too sore. Coop's got the fire though.
I can only dance while I'm sitting. That's the thing. I did enough dancing this weekend that I've been staying in my desk chair, just rolling around the house.
The Cavs walking up and down the Hall of Fame stadium, and my calves were screaming the next day.
Oh, dude, me and Mike Fiala getting off that plane. We got out of the dingy Boston Logan Airport, out of the subway, and it was just the most bright and beautiful day. And there were families walking around, like pointing at stuff and doing like duck boat tours. We got out of the we took the T, which is the underground in Boston, and we got out at the aquarium stop to walk to the train station, and it was literally like just 2 gremlins emerging from a sewer. And then there's just like families just like this, dude, like taking pictures, and we were just like like I said, I scraped my knee up, dude. I'm like walking around like, you had a good weekend when TSA asks you if you need a Band-Aid, so one of those weekends. But yeah, we just came out of like just fantasy expo mutants coming out of the sewer, and people are like, riding around on duck boats taking pictures.
That's the best, but that's how you know you had a good time.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And we, you know what? That was travel day was yesterday. You got home. Travel day is a lost day. Cleaned up, got our act together. Guess what? Back here talking ball with y'all. So what's up? So why don't we get into we missed yesterday. And honestly, at the expo, I did more talking about football than I wanted to. I like just hanging out at the expo. But fans want to chop it up. We chop it up. And honestly, it's kind of interesting the way news travels word of mouth at the expo. Did you see this? Did you hear about that? So let's get into some of the over or under reactions. Let's talk about things that happened and if they're meaningful or not. I personally, a lot of it, I think is, but we'll have to get into it. I mean, it's very interesting because teams don't want to show too much too. So it's kind of a gray area, right? But yeah, let's get into a few of them. Britt, what from this week had you wondering whether it was smoke or whether it was something real?
So one of them is Khalil Herbert and all of the snaps that he took with the starters in the Bears backfield. He played every single snap with the starters, and he even showed off some receiving ability. Some part of me wonders, did he only play with the starters because D'Onta Foreman's a little bit older? They want Herbert to develop his pass blocking more. Like, is this more of a practice than it is an indication of the depth chart? But Herbert looked good. And so I'm wondering if that is how everything's going to shake out, or if we're going to see something different. I know everybody's overreacting a little bit and moving Herbert up into the ranks, but I'm going to have to see if he is improved on pass blocking before I can actually put him in as an RB1 because again, it comes down to snaps. And if you can't pass block, you're not going to get as many snaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple guys, I'm sure we'll get to them. One in particular, Devon Achane, that when I watched all his snaps, didn't really love the way he was pass, but it wasn't as much pass blocking as it was diving at people's legs every single time. He's got to mix up his repertoire of moves there. But yeah, Herbert, it's always interesting with a team like this because you wonder what role is going to be the good one. Like when you have a quarterback like Drew Brees, the pass catching role, of course, is the one. But with a mobile quarterback like this, is that role even going to be one that's consistent? This team was a bottom 3 team in throwing to the running back. The other 2 teams, of course, were the Eagles and the Ravens. I don't need to tell you what those 3 teams have in common. Hint, it's a mobile quarterback that leads to not a lot of passes. Again, we talked about Scott Barrett's study on receptions versus carries. Another one Andrew Erickson did, which kind of proved a lot of the things that we, in theory, thought, mobile quarterbacks don't throw to the running back as much, but they're good for yards per carry for the running back. So in this backfield, I'm not even sure which role is the one that I prefer my back to have. Like if Donta Foreman is going to be the goal line back, that in theory you think would be good for a team that doesn't throw to the running back much, but they also have Justin Fields who might be taking it himself. So personally, my feeling so far this offseason, I have drafted, I'm not even kidding, 0 running backs from this team. I do not, on Underdog, and I do a lot of these, I don't think I have any Khalil Herbert, Donta Foreman, or Roschon Johnson. If I do, they were auto drafted. So I personally have been staying away from this, but I will admit, if they were to just have one running back that is the starter and everybody else would fill in, that player is going to beat their ADP because all these guys are cheap. Are you drafting any of them, Britt?
I've got a few shares of Herbert and Foreman. I have liked what I've seen from Foreman over the past 2 seasons, filling in, for the Panthers last year after McCaffrey got traded, for the Titans the year before after Derrick Henry went down. He's been very good and has put up several 100-yard games. So I like him as a pure rusher. But then you've got Herbert, who's like the poster kid of efficiency in yards per carry. When he's got the ball, he takes it. He can find avenues, he can move, he can shake tacklers. I think that they both are worthy of a spot on your bench. And of course in best ball, but on your bench and redraft, just because I think that this offense might change a little bit. And if that efficiency gets better, if defense is spread out more to actually guard DJ Moore now that they have a legit wide receiver 1, I think that these running backs can both get their shot of returning value from week to week.
Yeah, I'd say Herbert's most interesting because, Donta Foreman last year, he had almost 1,000 rushing yards. He had like 1 fewer rushing yard than Austin Eckler, but he doesn't catch passes. I think he caught like 7 or whatever. So he was still not even a top 24 running back. So yeah, not really interested in him. On the same Bears team, and this was the funniest word of mouth moment this weekend with the games plan because somebody came over and was like, 62-yard touchdown pass from Justin Fields to DJ Moore. And the guy next to me was like, "Oh, I thought Justin Fields couldn't throw." Right. And I was like, "Oh, I guess he can." And then sure enough, I see the highlight and it's a screen pass with 62-yard touchdown pass with 65 yards of yak or whatever it ended up being. So not exactly the throw that made the difference there. But I will say it's good to see DJ Moore making a big play. And that's the part that you forget with some of these guys. A lot of people forget that with like Jalen Waddle, that what you do with the ball in your hands is incredibly important. That's the difference between what you got from AJ Brown last year and what you got from DK Metcalf, because the targets were the same, the receptions were the same, the ADOT was the same for these 2 players, but one of them broke 17 tackles and had hundreds of yards of yak, and the other one only broke 7 and wasn't really escaping. And the difference from AJ Brown to DK Metcalf, you could feel it last year. And of course, in the numbers, AJ Brown was a high end wide receiver 1, and Metcalf, I think, was a wide receiver 2, but everything else was identical. So it is fun to see that for DJ Moore. The question is, are they really going to throw at another level, Britt? Are they really? They can't throw at last year's level, but are they going to be even a top 25 team in pass attempts?
They might crack top 25, but going over top 20 would be way too much for me. Another thing with that pass, nobody was talking about how the actual pass looked. I mean, you want to lead your receiver, right? That pass was thrown like over here, and then he had to switch and turn and get it. Moore is just a good enough receiver that he's able to do that
Made it
and get
happen.
away with it.
Yeah.
But it was the word of mouth was so funny. Everybody was
funny.
just looking at the stats and hyping that up. But that's when the balance of stats and film has to come into play
Huge.
because that hype got way out of control way fast.
Right, exactly. And there was a time, I mean, just imagine like Greg Kellogg was talking about when they first used to do these leagues and you would meet at the local bar or you would mail in your roster moves and there was one game on TV, right? And there was no yards after the catch stat or A dot or air yards or any of that. So you didn't even know, right? Like it's just crazy what we have now versus then. It's wild stuff. So, but enough about that one game. Dalton Kincaid, my boy there. He was out there he stayed out there for the second drive. Looked pretty good, did more than Dawson Knox. Although sometimes they take the veterans out just because they know who Dawson Knox is, right? So, I mean, Brett, I don't know, did anything meaningful from this week on these guys?
So I'm wondering and trying to balance, did they take Dawson Knox out because he's a veteran and because they already know who he is? Or did they take him out because Kincaid is the
Did they
actual
take him
tight
out
end one
back?
on the
Did they
team?
take him out back to put him down because Dalton Kincaid's just that much better, and they just
Right.
said, "Go out, go away."
And right. I don't think that that's going to be the case. In the past, Buffalo has run one of the fewest amounts of 12 personnel in the entire league. But you have to think spending a first round pick, trading up nonetheless to bring in Dalton Kincaid, not drafting or trading for another significant pass catcher, you're going to think that that 12 personnel number is going to go way up. And we kind of saw that where Dawson Knox was lined up as the blocker, and then Kincaid had that pass catching role. Confirms all of our biases that we've been talking about in the offseason. And so that was good to see. But I'm not so sure that that is going to be the case all the time. I think that it's going to come to more of a balance. Kincaid's still going to get his. He's going to be great. But I wouldn't be so ready to say he's the tight end 1 and Knox is the tight end 2. I think it's going to be much more of a 1A, 1B situation.
Yeah, and bro, it's not even our biases. Brandon Beane straight up said it. He said these guys are going to be on the field a ton. This guy plays more of a wide receiver role. This guy more in line. So I'm fully on board with Kincaid at his ADP. If it were a situation like Kyle Pitts, where Pitts was going like 10 and 5, now it's maybe different. But I mean, I'll go as far as to say that if Kincaid is the full-time slot wide receiver for this team, where Cole Beasley at age 30, 31, 32 had back-to-back 100 target seasons, there is a world where Dalton Kincaid has the best rookie fantasy season of all time. All he really needs to do is get 100 targets and have 800 or 900 yards. Doesn't even need to have 1,000 like Pitts. He just needs Pitts only caught one touchdown pass, right? So if you just mix in a couple touchdown passes and have 800, 900,000 yards, I mean, there's very few tight ends that have ever had seasons like that. I mean, Mike Ditka, we're talking about. Jeremy Shockey had a very good season. I mean, Evan Ingram's way up that list. And if you actually look at his rookie year, technically he was a top 5 tight end, but it wasn't like groundbreaking. So Kincaid really is in a position to impress. So I'm in.
I think I am too. I've been in since the very beginning. Love to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes me super happy. Another guy who I was in on, then I was out on, now maybe back in on is Deuce Vaughn.
Mhm.
He put up a pretty impressive season or game over the weekend. He had 56 yards and a touchdown. Is he making a case for the clear RB2 behind Pollard, or are they still going to play it safe with Malik Davis, who's the bigger guy? Our defense is going to be able, when he's playing actual first team defense, is going to be able to stop Vaughn. Was this an indication of his talent, or was it just preseason? And I still haven't been able to figure that out.
Yeah, I know it's tough. I honestly wish that he got drafted by a different team, simply because the whole idea that his father works for the team, that I just wish that wasn't even part of the equation, right? It wasn't even something I had to think about, that a team unbiased went out and took this guy. I will say he has impressed. And in the past, I would have just completely faded this guy based on size, because we have certain parameters. It's not a matter of go for the biggest guy, go for the smallest guy. It's within a certain parameter, we have a level of success where once you get outside those numbers, you have to factor in and it drops. And a wide receiver, like guys like Rondale Moore, they potentially are looking to break that mold. But a lot of times when you're on that lower end, it doesn't pan out. Same goes for running back when you're under like 195 pounds or so, and he's obviously way under. The odds become worse. But I will say another thing that I learned from Brandon Huffman, who is a great scout within this industry, and he basically said, "Look, everyone wants to go to those type things." We brought it up to him. He's like, "Everyone wants to go to those type things, but at a certain level, what matters more than anything else is can you play ball or not." And the two guys, we were talking tight ends, and the two guys he brought up unprompted were Bryce Young and Josh Downs. And he was like, these two players, no matter what, have that dog. Like they are ballers. So forget what people are saying about size or this or that. If they get drafted, then they're going that means that the teams believe what I believe, that these guys in their heart of hearts are football players. And sure enough, they go round 1 and round 3. So we're in. So Deuce Vaughn didn't quite go that high when, I think 6th round, was it 7th round?
Yeah, I think it was 6th.
Yeah. So, but I mean, hey, he looks the part. He looks good out there. It's just a matter of, can he carve out a real role and will he be a full-time? I mean, will he be able to stay healthy at that size?
Yep. And I mean, Sellers made a good point to me. We've been back and forth. I'm like, he's too small. I don't like him going up against these big defensive linemen. And Sellers goes, well, they can't tackle what they can't see. And I'm like, maybe that's true. Maybe that's why they're not able to find him, because he's so small and elusive and they don't really know which direction he's going. I'm very interested as a Cowboys fan, but also very nervous if he's going to be the RB2 behind Tony Pollard.
And there are plenty of, there are outliers. That's the thing, is that you're in the range of outliers, but I mean, Darren Sproles, right? Like he had a very long career, both as a return man, and he definitely had spurts with the Eagles and the Saints where he was fantasy relevant, even with the Chargers to a certain degree, and played very long time in this league, even at a very small size, right? So, it's entirely possible. I mean, if it's possible in basketball, it should be possible in football, right? I've seen, Nate Robinson win the dunk contest, right? So if it's possible there, it's possible here. So I'm not ruling it out, but I just don't know what type of format you take him in. Dynasty, yes, of course. But is there any redraft league? I mean, how many rounds does it have to be for you to take Deuce Vaughn? 20 rounds, 22 rounds?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's taking him in redraft unless you're looking very last round and you're a believer in handcuffing if he does win that role. But otherwise, nobody's taking him.
I got one for you, Britt. We talked earlier about the Colts, and we want to see who's going to be the guy in 2 wide receiver sets. Obviously, Pittman couldn't be more locked, probably the most locked in the league in terms of snap share. But we don't know who's going to be the second guy. This week, there was some information came to light. And it was Pro Football Focus Nathan Janke. Am I pronouncing that correct? I saw an article that he did where he did I say it right or did I say it wrong there? I think it's right. So he did like a little an article, a very useful one, helpful one, looking at some snap counts, and he noted that when they went to 12 personnel on the Jaguars, Calvin Ridley was out there, and so in 3 wide receiver sets, it was obviously Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, and Christian Kirk. On the few plays they went to 12 personnel, it was Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley, and Christian Kirk came out of the game. Now, I talked earlier about guys like Cooper Kupp and Keenan Allen, where they play slot in 3 wide receiver sets, but in 2 wide receiver sets, they move to flanker. The opposite of that is what we see nowadays with Tyler Boyd. Boyd used to be that guy, but now because they have T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, he's out there for 3 wide, and then they don't use that many. They don't really use a fullback at all, and they use a couple 2 tight end Drew sample sets from times. But when they do that, he comes out of the game. If Christian Kirk is coming out of the game for 2 wide receiver sets this year, he's being overdrafted. If on the flip side, though, if he is the guy in 2 wide receiver sets, he might have crazy upside. And hey, maybe Zay Jones needs to be picked up in more leagues. So I don't know, Britt. What do you think about that situation? I'll tell you what, it makes me feel a lot better about Calvin Ridley being solidified, but we might have to throw the yellow tape around Christian Kirk.
I'm not so much worried about Christian Kirk as I am Evan Ingram. to be honest.
Ingram's already in trouble. He's already in huge trouble. I've been telling
Well,
everybody that what we liked last year is no longer around.
right. And I think that that applies even more now because Christian Kirk's natural role is the slot. They just moved him outside because they had Ingram. They didn't really have anybody else who could fill that outside role when he moved, when they moved to two wide receivers or yeah, two wide receiver sets.
Right.
Now with Kirk in the slot, I still think that he gets the targets. The snap share concerns me a little bit, but Evan Ingram, I think we've
Yeah.
got to put like a headstone up for Evan
He's in
Ingram.
big trouble, man. Yeah. And the thing, that's why it makes it like and of course you got to get the money when the money's right. But if he were looking to, yeah, because the problem the real problem and why it's smart of him to sign the long-term deal is what if he does have a down year, he plays under the tag and has a down year, then he's in big trouble. That's what happened to Mike Gesicki, right? Where like he played under the tag for a new regime that didn't even use him as a tight end, and he got crushed in contract negotiations. Dalton Schultz, also another one, played under the tag, only got $6 million, right? Whereas Ingram, this deal he got, it's double digits in AAV for multiple years. So I think he just put himself in a position now where he's not going to have as high upside as we'd like to see. So I don't know. I might hold off on Christian Kirk. He only played 7 snaps, 6 were in the slot, 1 out wide, whereas Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones played 11 and 12, and they were out wide the whole time. So might be a little too thin. Makes me just want to draft. I'll draft Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley and Travis Etienne and call it a day. And Tank Bigsby too.
Yeah, can't forget about Tank.
Can't forget about Tank. We like the steam there. Let me ask you, Kenneth Gainwell. This one's really interesting because it's more about what we didn't see. First, there was some talk about him getting the first handoff, the first rep in practice, which right away we're like, all right, that's nice. Then he doesn't even play, and they sit a lot of the starters. So they went to Kenneth Gainwell and said, hey, you know what? You're hanging out. DeAndre Swift played, Rashad Penny played, and pretty much everyone else played. But actually, they held out Boston Scott too. So maybe their policy is just to play guys that are new to the system, or do you think maybe this says something about the depth chart, Britt?
Yeah, this depth chart is just messy, nasty, gross, and we're not really getting any clarity. I've seen from multiple places that Rashad Penny is the RB1. Then I've seen in another one that it's DeAndre Swift. Then I've seen that Kenneth Gainwell is, the RB2 behind Swift, and that they're even going to cut Rashad Penny. Like there is no clarity in this backfield whatsoever. I need to see more. I need to see some actual games. I know you can get Kenneth Gainwell and Rashad Penny super, super cheap. But I think I would rather take Gainwell over Penny, even at that difference in cost, because of Penny's injury history for one, and then the uncertainty around it. I would rather take the guy who's been there longer and who knows the system.
Yeah, well, I have Rashad Penny in exactly 0 leagues because this is a guy who, and I don't even care that he's injury prone. That you can just throw that on top, but I don't even care about that part. This guy's never caught more than 10 passes in a season. Right? He's just not a pass catcher, and he goes to the team that threw the fewest passes to the running back. And it's not in this particular case, it's not just Jalen Hurts, because when you look at the numbers, I've said this on here before. I pulled up the screen passes to running backs in 2019, just to Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. Doug Peterson dialed up 39. And then I pulled up last year to Miles Sanders and Boston Scott, and they played more snaps last year, and they only got 6. The entire running back group combined for like 9, and Dallas Goedert got 19 screens by himself. Nick Sirianni just doesn't really throw screens to the running back. It's not part of the playbook, really. So maybe with DeAndre Swift, it will be a little more, but I'm not paying up for Penny or Swift. I'd rather just wait and take Gainwell. So the one I have been drafting is Gainwell. I think I did take Swift in one league where just nobody was taking him, but I'll just wait and take Gainwell. And our own Howard Bender has been taking Kenneth Gainwell in a decent amount of drafts, I know as well. Speak of the devil, right on time. Our own, I think you might have heard A little earworm there, Howard. Did you hear?
Sorry, guys. You know, I would have been here earlier, but those boys at Mad Dog Sports Radio are so thirsty for fantasy content. It's
Yeah, yeah.
unbelievable. They just kept me on there the entire time.
Way she
As
goes.
they
dude.
should.
But then you heard someone mention Kenneth Gainwell, and you were like, "Boys, I gotta go." It's like the bat signal goes up. Dude.
No, I was like, in all honesty, I was like, you guys probably need me on here for like the full hour because you guys don't know nothing about no fantasy.
Smoked him. Got him. What's
But
up,
I had
Howard?
to
How
be
you
nice
doing?
because it was Danny Cannell, and and Danny Cannell is an ex-Giant. And if I even remotely badmouth Danny Cannell or any ex-Giant for that matter, then the wife gets really unhappy really
careful,
quick.
I was gonna say Deb will crush you.
She
You
will.
badmouth
Wow,
any Giants.
she crushes me anyway. That woman crushes my soul.
As
That is a
as
lie.
she should. I can't. We can't. After sneaking away to the expo, especially me, we can't. We have to praise the ladies that held down the homestead for us. So
Oh, no doubt about it. I got to tell you. And Sellers is the prettiest lady of them all. We know
Oh.
that.
Man, he did
Beautiful.
dishes. He's mowing the yard right now. He's holding down this
Yeah,
home
you-
perfectly.
the
Hey,
yard
Sellers.
got some Tuesday metal Pantera tickets, right? Just like any just like any good home wife would, right? Tuesday.
Yeah, which he told me was Friday, by the way.
I know he
He
did,
totally
which-
got the
that's
dates
hilarious,
wrong.
dude.
Oh man.
Yeah, I stayed up late with the kiddo last night. I let my wife sleep in, so tonight I'm jumping on with filling in for Colton and the Wolfman, so we couldn't really do it tonight as much. I'm going to take the baby for the rest of the night. Anyway, enough baby talk. Let's talk some foosball.
Ooh, foosball.
So Howard, we were just going through some notable things that already kind of came to light during preseason. Now we wanted to get into some questions that we don't have any answers to yet, but the questions we have before the season. I wanted to get your opinion on that. Number one that we had on our list here is Russell Wilson. I think on this show, the three of us we're in. Do you think that there's a possibility that he could get back to the level that we saw where he was the MVP of this league and where he was leading this league in touchdown passes, winning the Super Bowl? Do you think that's a possibility, or are we just talking about a guy that can be the QB 10 or 11 in fantasy football here?
Wait. Who are we talking about here?
Russell Wilson.
I thought so, man. I was like, man, maybe
When you're
okay.
the MVP talk,
Listen, I think yes, I do think that Russell Wilson can bounce back in this system. I do. I believe it. I think he's got the weaponry for it. I think this system will obviously cater to his needs a little bit more. When you talk about what Sean Payton and Joe Lombardi did with adjusting Drew Brees' game, because of the height problem and peppering the sidelines on the regular and things like that. I think that they're experienced enough with helping retrain the quarterback, because that's what they did. Brees came over from the Chargers to the Saints and they completely revamped his game. I think they can do the very similar thing with Russell Wilson. I mean, he's not going to be, a top 5 QB, and we're not going to be like, let Russ cook and all the other nonsense that goes along with that. But I do think that, he's going to finish this season as a top 10 QB, and both Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton are going to probably exceed, a lot of people's expectations. Obviously Sutton more than Jeudy though.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting that Russell Wilson. I mean, last year, even how bad he was, he finished as QB 15. This year, he goes as QB 18. So I mean, it almost feels like house money. What's going on with Greg Dulcich? What's the situation with him?
I think everyone is just overreacting a little bit because of depth chart mania. People see these depth charts get released and then they jump to conclusions, even though, we've still got 3 or 4 weeks until actual football starts. And they're seeing Adam Troutman listed as the tight end 1 on the Broncos depth chart. I think that, maybe he's listed on there because he is going to be the blocker. Sean Payton did bring him over. I think that, Dulcich is still going to have a pass catching role. Even if he's not listed as a tight end 1, he's going to have a role there. Troutman may play more snaps, quote unquote, but he's not the tight end one. It's
the
going to be
cl-
Dulcich.
It's the classic hardo old school coach move to put the blocking tight end one, right? Like Mercedes Lewis was listed over Robert Tunyon, and then Robert Tunyon scored 11 touchdowns. Like I'm not worried about it at all. Not one bit.
Are you guys familiar with the movie Coming to America?
Yes.
I've never seen it, but I know it. I know of it.
Wow. And then forget that. Then the reference is going to be lost right now, because I was about to say, Mercedes Lewis. Why is it every time I'm on a show with Coop, he always talks about Mercedes Lewis? Rocky Marciano. How come every time Mercedes Lewis is like Coop's go-to blocking tight end reference?
Sorry, I should have. Another time that happened, Drew Sample was listed as one on the depth chart.
Sample, there you go. Much better.
There you go, Howard. If you want a different example, there's a pivot to
that dude's got the mobility of a refrigerator. It's unbelievable.
I got clunky tight ends in the chamber, ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh God! Look, my annual shout out to hey Kenny Pickett. How jealous are you right now? Look at the size of my hands with this.
Wow.
This is an NFL football right here. Right? This is an NFL football, and I am not Kenny Pickett.
Yeah. Oh man. I keep telling everybody he's got no sellers. The lawnmower's not too loud. You're fine. Keep mowing. Thank you. This is great.
Keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. Get all the chores out of the way so that, I can just take off and have fun after work.
He's in the chat, dude. Just got to make sure he doesn't drive into a rose bush out there, though, dude. We got Chad in one hand, mower in the other. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, he's a great multitasker. He's
he's got a beer in one hand, the chat in the other. He's driving with his knee.
Smart guy. Smart.
Yeah, that's great.
Deal. He's in.
I love this, man. And guys, this is what I could say. What a committed fan. He's watching this while mowing the lawn and
beast, dude.
And participating in the chat.
Scampers, what else are you doing right now, dude? Because everybody else is multitasking.
Scampers is braiding his beard right now. Leave him be.
Glorious beard.
That beard, I gotta tell you, that beard at the expo was absolutely impressive. I almost wanted to sit down in a chair and have him stand behind me and just put the beard as my hair, because I'm kind of thinning up top here. So that would have been a dreamboat for me.
Yeah. Fix that right up. That's how that works.
Oh man. Some questions that I've had, and I think that we may be overlooking a little bit, is the Bucks and their offense in general. I mean, Baker Mayfield looked pretty good in preseason. He was 8 of 9 for 63 yards and a touchdown. He's currently only got an underdog ADP of quarterback 32, which is at 214.4. Chris Godwin has an ADP of wide receiver 31, 53.9. And Mike Evans has an underdog ADP of wide receiver 34, 66.6. So my question that I want answered around Baker Mayfield and the Bucks, are we too low on him? And are they going to become this year's Seahawks?
Ooh, I mean, I don't know if they're going to become this year's Seahawks. I mean, because Dave Canales really wants to run the football. And I think that Todd Bowles is so focused on the defense that he's not going to have any kind of offensive input or opinion, on that. I don't think that defense is strong enough to hold a lot of teams down. And I don't necessarily see them getting into any kind of a shootout. That being said, I do think that the industry is traditionally low on Baker Mayfield. And, I can't really say that the team is in better shape by putting Kyle Trask in. I think that's why everybody's so down on him. And I've been doing, Best Ball Mania drafts on the regular, and I've yet to see Baker Mayfield really get, put onto a team, even a team that's going for 3 QBs. In their best ball format, they're not doing Baker Mayfield. But yes, I do think that we are a little low on him, just in that sense that I would probably rather have Baker Mayfield than CJ Stroud. I would probably rather have Baker Mayfield than, maybe even Bryce Young at this point, because he's still learning and he's still green. Right. At least that Baker Mayfield has some stability in the sense that he knows the NFL game. So, I think that if you are sitting there, I mean, listen, if I'm sitting there and I draft Patrick Mahomes and I want to ignore a backup QB until the bitter end, then I think that Baker Mayfield, listen, he's not great. He can be very inaccurate. He can be very problematic. I think that will cause Chris Godwin and Mike Evans to suffer, which is why you're seeing Evans. I have Evans I see him dropping more than I see Godwin dropping,
Right.
because everybody just expects those West Coast passing, short, high percentage passes to go to Chris Godwin. But for Mike Evans, I think that is where the problem is, because he'll come down with the deep shots, but this isn't like Tom Brady hitting them for 2 touchdowns in a game. Baker's gonna, he's gonna overthrow him a bunch. McGonigal wants to know what the ceiling is for Baker. I don't really think it's that great of a ceiling. I mean, I'm sure it's probably somewhere in like the, 3,800 to 4,000 yards. Maybe he throws, 18 to 20 touchdowns, throws like, 13 to 15 picks. I mean, that's kind of, what I'm looking at for over there. But I think overall, I mean, yes, everybody in the fantasy community always kind of exaggerates. We go to the extremes. We do. Baker Mayfield, he sucks. That's it. I'm done. I'm not even going to, look at him. But meanwhile, when you're sitting there and Tua goes down injured and somebody just snaked Mike White from you, well, where are you going to go? You're going to end up probably looking at Baker Mayfield and doing it that way. You know what? I'm going to jump into a Best Ball Mania 4 contest right after this show. And I'm going to make sure that I walk away with a Bucks stack. Like, I will do Godwin, I will do Evans, and I will, and then with like one of my final picks, I will do Baker Mayfield, and then I'll bring it to the two of you when the draft is complete, and we can compare. If you guys want to jump in against me, well, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll just have Coop set up a new draft here, and I'll do that one there. Go to fantasyalarm.com/underdog. All right. Use that. That's the link to get there. Use the promo code ALARM, ALARM. All right. That'll give you 100% match up to $100. So again, fantasyalarm.com/underdog, promo code ALARM for $100, up to $100 match on your first deposit. And come take me on. I'll beat you with a buck stack. And I'll laugh at you right in front of your face when I do it.
I'll tell you what, man, like that's the thing is he talks about the ceiling. Well, the ceiling probably isn't high enough for you to roster him in a typical 12-team league, but in Underdog, everybody's taking 2 or 3 quarterbacks, right? So he's going. And honestly, I've seen with Jameis Winston, and Jameis Winston, of course, a little bit more of a huck-it-chuck-it gunslinger, but we're talking Chris Godwin was a wide receiver 2 overall that year, and Mike Evans was Mike Evans, which he's always Mike Evans. So, what was it, 33 touchdowns? People forget. I've seen Baker throw 26 touchdowns. I've seen him throw 27. So, I mean, it's possible. Now, we have to obviously put the caveat on this that we have to hide this episode from John and Pemba, right, Howard? Because he has notoriously been the Baker Mayfield. Johnny does what? We'll get him on the draft too. Then we don't have to worry about him taking Baker.
I did. I'll shout it out to the Kangas man who actually was on Sirius XM and actually apologized publicly to John and Pemba for fighting him on Pemba's Baker Mayfield takes. Listen, we know Baker Mayfield is not a great quarterback. We know he was overrated coming into the league. But the fact remains right now is that if you're sitting there if you're in this large field tournament like Best Ball Mania 4, okay, you have to find some ways to differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack. Yeah. So, get yourself that Mahomes Kelsey stack up top and lean on that. But, throw down the Bucks there with Baker Mayfield and try and see if you can get a couple of, 1 or 2 weeks where, all of a sudden maybe Mahomes gets hurt and he sits out a game. Maybe that's the case. And then Baker turns around and puts up 270 with 3 touchdowns. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but when you're playing in one of these large field tournaments, to have a stack as so low owned as the Bucks, right? And that, again, it's not your primary stack. It doesn't have to be your
Right.
primary stack. This is your supporting cast. Make him your QB3, right? Pair him up with Godwin. If you don't want to go full stack, pair him up with Godwin instead of Evans. But at least then, in that case, you're differentiating yourself, and you're giving yourself a better shot, like to just win more money.
And yeah, it's super cheap. So you can get a different stack at a low cost.
Let me throw
And
another one
that's
at you guys.
perfect.
Let me throw another one at you guys, because Howard, I've seen you drafting DeAndre Hopkins, and I've done the same. I think you actually just took him in the Kings Classic this week,
Mhm.
right? You took Hopkins. And Britt, obviously we know that you still like Treylon Burks.
She does.
A little, just a little. So
Wait,
yeah.
let me ask this question here. All right. What do we love more? Does Britt love Treylon Burks more than Coop loves Mercedes Lewis? Or is it
I don't know.
reversed?
Yeah, I'd say that those are probably our two most name dropped players for sure. But let me ask you guys, in the, say you're doing a underdog best ball where, again, 2 to 3 quarterbacks, do you ever circle back for Ryan Tannehill?
Yes,
I think people forget that Tannehill was a QB1 just 2 years ago, that he does have rushing upside and rushing floor. Oh, Howard's, yeah.
I don't know what
bouncing.
he's doing, dude. I never know. I
But-
never know what he's doing. There you go.
Oh, the Arkansas hat came out.
Oh.
Yes.
If we're gonna talk stacking Tannehill with Burks and Hopkins, let me get my Hogs hat going here, in support of Britt Flynn.
It looks
There
so
it is,
good.
dude. Here.
Red's your color, Howard.
Yeah, it really is not my color.
If we're gonna talk Mercedes Lewis, I should put on my tight end whisperer, hat.
Oh,
Ani Coop special. We got to get one made up for you too, Howard. Ani Coop's got the technology.
right?
I love
like
it.
that. I like
But-
that.
So
But
yeah,
yeah,
I mean
I-
Tannehill, I'm in, man. I've been mixing him in on a bunch of them, and he goes so late. It's great. He goes undrafted too. A lot of times, it's like Mac Jones or Ryan Tannehill. Even as a Patriots fan, I'm like, give me Tannehill. At least Tannehill every once in a while will run it in from like 9 yards out and give you that random
Mhm.
touchdown. Whereas Mac Jones is not doing that.
No. And I
Not
love
even
the listen, he's got the receiving weapons. We know that. And I mean, you kind of look at it here almost in a similar sense that we're looking at the Atlanta Falcons right now. Granted, the offensive line is not great in Tennessee, and the offensive line in Atlanta is a lot better. Okay. But what you're doing here is, you've got a run first offense. They're going to pound the rock with Derrick Henry. Okay. And then that's going to open up the passing game while the defenses come in to whether to stack the box or whatnot. And that's just going to free up Tannehill to hit Burks and Hopkins on the regular. I mean, maybe, you're not looking at as many targets as you would be in a high volume passing offense, but efficiency wise, they can definitely crush it.
And we've already seen it happen is the thing. We don't have to say if this, then why. Like we've
Right.
already seen it. It's the same coaching staff. It's very, very possible. And we're just overlooking at because Tannehill was injured last year and Burks was injured last year. And we're like, oh, this offense stinks. When in reality, they always find a way to come back and contend. And in a best ball format, they don't need to be good every week. If they have these spike weeks, like they're going to pay off. They're going to put up some points. And yeah, I'm definitely still in on them.
Yeah, we have to readjust for the narratives too. I think that's the big thing is these pre-draft narratives even, and then right after the draft, we make these adjustments and we never adjust back. Like they draft Will Levis and we're like, everyone's like, oh, Tannehill is done. He's toast. He's getting traded. He's getting moved. They did the opposite. They went out and got a weapon for him. And now the rumor is that Will Levis might not even win that QB2 job, that it could be Malik Willis. And we know that they're not going to just randomly bring Malik Willis in. They didn't even want to do that last year when Tannehill got hurt. They had to go get a guy off the streets. So I think his job is pretty safe right now with the Hopkins move. If anything, they had to decide a way to go, move on from Tannehill and Derrick Henry, or go for it one last time, and they're going for it. So I'm in.
Sellers, no, Britt did not send me this hat. I had to get it on my own, along with my University of Arkansas sweatshirt that I purchased. Why? Because I support Britt and Sellers. Those are my two. That's my lock into Arkansas kind of thing. You're like my favorite couple. I love you both, and so I want to lend some support here. I also have a lot of shares of Treylon Burks too as well. So
I don't
and I'm going to be covering Eric Hinsky's fantasy football draft on September 1st while I'm in Denver at Fish. I'm going to be covering that, and Hinsky was a Razorback himself. So I'm just supporting the peoples.
I
don't
love
know-
it.
I have a college basketball team, the Friars, Providence College, but they don't have a football team. So I'm kind of a free agent. You know, I would go with the Diamondbacks. I mean, the Razorbacks, sorry. But Jake Buck,
Diamondbacks.
yeah, big Diamondbacks fan. I actually did like them back when they had Goldschmidt and AJ Pollock, and Robbie Ray, but that's another story. But I don't know. Jake Buck came on my show the other day, so I might go Michigan. You'll have to sell me on joining you guys as Razorback fans.
I don't think we need to sell you. I think it all speaks for itself.
I don't
Michigan
know,
blows,
man.
dude.
I don't know. It's a pretty sharp hat. So
I
you're
can't
out.
root for Harbaugh. Stop it.
Oh, that's true. But his quotes are so good though. You can't plant potatoes today and expect to eat potato salad tomorrow, Howard. That's a Jim Harbaugh right there.
You know what? Slightly impressive. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. That was actually pretty good.
So okay. Anyway, let's get on. While we're dreaming here, let's come up with some dream trades, either for real life football or fantasy football. Trades that we make sense for real football or that we'd love to see for fantasy. And we can do that now because in the past we would say that, but it would never happen, right? Like early 2000s and in the 90s, nobody was getting traded, especially in the 90s, you know, before the cap and all that, nobody was getting moved. But now we see it all the time. Christian McCaffrey was traded mid-season to a team with one of the best offensive lines. Zach Ertz was moved, not only a team to a team where he could catch passes, but he freed up Dallas Goedert with that trade. DJ Moore, a wide receiver, was traded for the first overall pick in the draft to take a quarterback, which is like something that Twitter would make up. So like these trades actually do happen these days. So I got to ask you guys, if you could come up with some dream trades, either for fantasy or real life, what's something that you would like to see? Britt, I'll ask you first. Give me something that you think that would, for real life or fantasy, would love to happen mid-season or even right now if possible.
I would like to see Jonathan Taylor get traded to the Dolphins in some way, shape, or form. Like, I know Howard's like, nope, let's not do that. I know you won't like that.
I don't like that either.
But it would be a dream
Terrible
for me.
idea, Britt. Terrible idea.
Just seeing him in that Mike McDaniel offense. They missed out on Dalvin Cook. They've got two older guys who, likely won't be around for many years longer. And if you look at typical terms of running back careers, and you've got a younger guy in A-Chain who can be like that pass catching back. It would be like that 1-2 punch that would be perfect for Miami's offense, and for Tua. It would open up the passing game even more than it already is. I mean, I think that they would be absolutely unstoppable with Jonathan Taylor in Miami.
As the two other fans of AFC East teams are sitting here and saying maybe a little too perfect, right, Howard?
Yeah.
Let's not do that.
Pretty much. Let's trade every star player to every NFC East team except for the Cowboys.
Yeah,
and we'll see how Britt likes it.
Exactly.
I'd like to see Patrick Mahomes traded to the Washington Commanders.
I literally was going to say the same trade, the same exact trade. Actually, you know what? That would be crazy. That team would actually be sick. Jahan Dotson to the moon. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Patrick Mahomes. Eric Bieniemy's already there. You know what? I changed that to mine too, Britt.
We're just going to turn this segment into dogging on each other's teams with trades. That's how this is going to end up.
I'll dog your trade, though. I'll dog your trade because I don't want Jonathan Taylor to go to Miami. What I would like to see is I'd like to see Jonathan Taylor get traded to the Chargers. I think that would be the ideal spot. Let me hand over Austin Eckler, right, who works a lot better in the RPO system that they're going to be running in Indianapolis. Throw in a second round draft pick just as like a little sweetener and put Jonathan Taylor with the Chargers. That to me, that's win-win for both sides. Like to have the talent of Eckler working RPOs behind Anthony Richardson in his inaugural season. And then Taylor, who, is just a stud running back in a Kellen Moore system that will feature him so beautifully between the tackles.
That would in theory with the offenses, it's perfect. The thing is, it's both those guys want to get paid. So, and the teams don't want to pay them. So you swap those two guys and it helps everybody except them, right? Like they're still in the same boat where Spanos and Irsay don't want to pay running backs. So, but again, it's our dream. So what are they going to do about
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Can't tell me what to dream.
That's right. I got a dream here. This is for a real life standpoint, more so than fantasy, but might also help for fantasy. Mike Evans to the Lions. Let's say the Bucks do stink this year and they're just going to blow it up and try and get what they can for these guys mid-season. The Lions, to me, their rebuild has been so good. They went out and did a great job with the defense. On offense, they have great line, Penei Sewell, Frank Ragnow, the whole crew, another Razorback right there. And then they have at wide receiver, they have a slot guy in Amon-Ra St. Brown. They have a field stretching flanker in Jamison Williams. They got the tight end in Laporta. They got the two backs. They got the quarterback. The one thing they're missing is the big body split end. And if you add that to that team, that is borderline perfect offense to me. And that honestly is, to me, the difference maker between this team being a playoff team and now being a team where I say, why can't that team win the Super Bowl, right? That's the one thing they didn't really do. They got Marvin Jones. They tried DJ Chark last year, bigger guy, but injury prone stuff. Marvin Jones is going to try and hold that roll down, but man, that would be crazy to see them have that one last piece right there. So maybe Sam Laporta can play out there a little bit, but I think Mike Evans to Lions from real life standpoint makes a lot of sense.
Really selling Khalif Raymond short. You know that Khalif Raymond's mom watches this show, dude.
Don't let Better Boss here. The Better Boss, Matt Doyce the best. He actually, in the middle of doing an interview, I was interviewing somebody at the expo for our content, and out of nowhere I hear him scream, "Richie James touchdown!" And I'm like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "We're trying to make content over here, man." The biggest Richie James fan.
His excitement is unchallenged.
He's like the Lorax. Instead of speaking for the trees, he speaks for like wide receiver sevens.
For the garbage wide receivers.
Yeah. Someone's got to stand up for Richie James and Khalif Raymond.
All right, somebody who has like skills when it comes to like memes and stuff like that. I want a meme of Matt Deutsch's face on the Lorax saying, "I speak for the wide receiver sevens." Right,
and all the trees are pictures of Richie James and Paris Campbell and.
Right. Yeah. Like just every crap wide receiver who's out there, just like on like a truffle a tree, which is what they are. Yeah. If you can get me that Lorax Matt Deutsch thing, I'll give you a free subscription to Fantasy Alarm.
Yeah. Get that up there.
First person who gets me the quality meme there, I will get you a free subscription to Fantasy Alarm.
Perfect. Yeah. High quality. All right. Britt, you got another one? Well, actually, did I do one? Yeah, I did the Evans.
Yeah.
Howard, you do
one. What do you mean you forgot one?
You just did a Jonathan Taylor kind of after one there. You got another one that you could throw out?
I do. I mean, I give me either Kadarius Toney or Sky Moore over to the Bills. I know you don't like this one, Coop, because it puts Dalton Kincaid out of the slot in 3 receiver sets. But I mean, listen, I think the way that we've seen the way Dawson Knox has played as a receiver in this system. So I'm not really that worried that if Kincaid was, lined up primarily as the tight end, that he can't, do it. It just gives you more depth. You've got Diggs who can stretch the field and go across the middle. It gives you that low end, underneath guy who's got great speed that Josh Allen can hit in stride. They're rich man's Isaiah McKenzie's is basically what it is. Because you can't rely on Gabe Davis on the other side of the field for any kind of consistency.
Yeah, I really, that's the one this offseason that even trading up to get Dalton Kincaid, I feel like they didn't quite do enough. They're kind of rolling out very similar offense to last year. So you're right, Howard. They needed one more piece, and they have the outside guys. So they do need a little more over the middle. Surprised that Cole Beasley signed somewhere besides the Bills. If if that's where they needed help, I could see it would hurt Dalton Kincaid though. There's no way around it. So based on that, I'm gonna have to wake you up so that dream doesn't come true. I'm gonna go with there it is. It was just a dream, Howard. Don't worry, Dalton Kincaid is safe. There's one of those I want to create another Dalton Kincaid. I want to take more tight ends that play slot and free them. So one trade I would do, Isaiah Likely. And honestly, they're not going to do it because just like Tyler Huntley for them, he's a great backup that goes right in and does what the starter does, just a little worse, but it's a good feeling. Like 2 weeks without Mark Andrews last year, he played 81% of his snaps from the slot. Isaiah Likely did, and had 8 targets a game. Like he filled in well. But I would take him and just move him to a team like the Rams, where they are just completely devoid of pass catchers, and this guy could immediately line up at wide receiver. You could even have Tyler Higbee in line, but I want to free Isaiah Likely and give him a chance to be a full-time player, or at least play like 60, 70% of the snaps instead of like 10 or 20 like he was last year. So give me Isaiah Likely to the Rams. That's the move that I would make.
See, Sellers and I are sharing dreams. We have a Isaiah Likely, but not going to the Rams, going to the Cowboys.
Yeah, of course.
Because, losing Dalton Schultz, Jake Ferguson, Peyton Hendershot, Luke Schoonmaker, I'm not just sold on any of those guys as legit pass catchers, and we need one.
Yeah.
Isaiah Likely to Dallas would just put this offense on another level.
I'd be all over him with Dallas. Honestly, the Rams,
Mhm.
the Dolphins, where he could just be the slot wide receiver. But again, they got kind of highly consolidated targets. Scamper says Jameis Winston back to the box. Make it happen.
It is wild to me that he's still not a starter
Yeah, I
with
know.
so many like unproven guys and rookies out there. He lost his job due to injury, and I still think that he played better than any of the other quarterbacks, the
There's only so
backups
many
out there.
jobs
So like,
out there.
why?
Only so many jobs. It's crazy that's how hard it is to be an NFL quarterback. That when you're like the 15th best quarterback in the world, we sit here on the internet, we're like, that guy stinks, right? Like top 15 in the world at his job, multimillionaire, and I'm like, yeah, Jared Goff, nah, like quarterback, man, what a ridiculous job that is. This job's a lot easier.
I'm trying to think of what teams, because I like the Isaiah Likely talk here, and I'm trying to think of like teams that could really use like a big pass catching tight end that only have like 2 decent wide receivers and really need that extra weapon there. I think that's a really nice. It could be a really nice landing spot.
Yeah, him versus Musk. I know they drafted Musgrave, but the Packers, it's open over there, right?
Mhm.
There's some possibility there. If Mike Gesicki, if they had big plans for him and that shoulder is messed up, Isaiah Likely could play that exact role.
Wow, how about Miami instead of Durham Smythe?
Yeah, that'd be good. He would be the best slot wide receiver on the team immediately, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Well, let's dream on it and get out of here. We got to go. Our producer's backstage telling us to bounce. Go over to Fantasy Alarm, fantasyalarm.com/allpro. Get our package. We'll see y'all tomorrow.
Joe.